Hello everyone. For this presentation, our group will be discussing about the myth in video games. But first, allow me to introduce my group members. Our group members consist of Daniel, Adriana, Renzo, and Carla. Before we dive deep into the topic, let's take a moment to understand what is the definition of myth in this context. Myth, in the context of this presentation, is a vehicle for transmission of values that are meant to be endorsed without hesitation. To put it simply, myth is used as a tool to promote certain values to public through video games, and those values, even how irrational they may sound, are meant to be accepted by public, and the public does not need to question the values. And for the rest of the presentation, we will introduce two values that are widespread and common in video games, and how myths have become an excellent tool to shove these values down the public's throat. One of the many ideologies that are present in video games is idolatry. According to Oxford Dictionary, the noun idolatry means the worship of image or representation of a god used as an object of worship.
Idolatry means the worship of a physical object as a god. Some of us may have an outpouring affection to someone or something, be it humans or things that represent sentimental values, that led us to treating those stuffs with extreme care and love. There are also people that treats a physical object as sacred and worship it as if it is a representation of the gods themselves. In the ancient times, idolatry is acceptable and casual. For instance, ancient Egyptians used to build giant statues to commemorate the power of the gods, and they will pray by this statue to ask for help from a certain god. Here where idolatry goes wrong. Most traditional religions are against the idea of idolatry, especially the Abrahamic religion. For example, the first thing the Catholic cites in its Ten Commandments is, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." The fact that prohibition of idolatry is mentioned as the first commandment proves that the rejection of idolatry is valued above everything else in the Catholic. And this is true for other religions as well, like Islam, Judaism, and many more. In some video games, you are required to do tasks that challenges your traditional belief in order to progress throughout the game. The tasks often include worshipping the gods or objects or performing sacrifice to an entity. However, why don't we question those practices when it is clearly against our beliefs? Well, the answer is simple. It is easy to dismiss this whole situation since we know in the back of our mind that video games are not real. When we worship things other than gods in video games, that doesn't mean we choose to change or defy our belief in real life. We are told to worship those things because we want to win and finish the game. We are also aware of the fact that it is virtual, hence, making us think it is okay to believe their existence, thus performing idolatry in the game. The structure of myth, in which Greek gods are worshipped, make us think that worshipping them is acceptable. And just like that, myths have successfully influenced people into liberating the idea of idolatry, even if it's just into video games. On top of that, video games like Assassin's Creed, God of War, and few other video games revolve around the narrative of ancient myth. Assassin's Creed Odyssey in particular has characters that are based on the Greek gods, for example Hades and Poseidon. There is also the underworld where the soul of the dead walks. We know they do not exist because they are myth. We, however, never deny the existence of Hades and Poseidon in the video games because the video games made them exist. And it makes perfect sense why players are assigned to worship them. Because the ancient Greeks used to worship Greek gods, so the similar concept is applied in these video games. So, in some sense, these things we just discussed is real, although they are actually not real. The discussion here of realness in this topic is irrelevant. The video games need it to be real. Hence, it is real. Does it feel real when you ride a skeleton horse with flames all over its body, rambling in the underworld, killing a three-headed dog? Well, in the game, yes. In real world, no. Again, we draw the line of the connection between the real world and the video games. We all, in one way or another, have been taught to adhere to a certain set of acts and beliefs that has been the pillar to our way of life. Like how Zeus taught the ancient Greek community to be respectful of Xenia, video games taught us on how to be acceptance of the existence of another realm other than the reality that we live in currently. And within this realm comes a new set of beliefs that we must follow in order to prevail. We accept this belief because we believe the virtual realm of video games does not intertwine with the real world directly. Video games players have accepted that the belief brought from video games is real but does not interact with the real world.
Safe violence. Violence, as we know, is a noun that just means to purposely cause damage or hurt or try to kill someone or something. Earlier in the presentation, we introduced the idea that video games are a medium that promotes certain values that are frowned upon in our society. One of these values being steadily promoted is safe violence. What exactly do we mean by safe violence? Safe violence basically means that players can inflict harm and kill without having any real-life repercussions or remorse. Every person is aware of the fact that violence is frowned upon. We, as everyday people, are cautious as to not bring harm towards others and ourselves. However, in a game, these beliefs are glossed over. For example, in the game God of War, there's extreme violent action scenes, dismemberments, as well as immense bloodshed and gore. There's harm caused to many people, monsters, and animals in the gameplay. However, any everyday person can happily play this game. But why, if we're so against violence in our daily life? The reason for this is because we're aware of the fact that it's not real. Our morals and beliefs of nonviolence, among other things, are overlooked. A player could mass murder a group of people in a game and feel no remorse. However, by playing and enjoying these games, we do not become bad or certainly want to inflict violence. We just have a temporary acceptance.
In this photo, we see Kratos, the main character in God of War, violently killing one of his enemies. While a similar scene in real life would be hard to watch, few find discomfort in watching Kratos dismember his enemies because it is a game. By recognizing that it is not real, the game is able to bypass the usual discomfort associated with this act and make the player accept the action, or even feel gratification in it, depending on the person. The game is also able to achieve this feat by using the myth that these creatures are evil. After all, no one would care if an evil, fictional Cyclops were to be killed in a violent manner. This is how games get around the notion that violence is bad.
As people, we all have our own set of beliefs and morals. As social beings, we all turn away from doing harm to our community as well as to ourselves. Psychologically, the majority of people are naturally peaceful. Our morals and beliefs are influenced by the games we play, similar to how people's morals and beliefs were influenced due to myths. We accept the action of killing and harming human animals and creatures because it's a game. There are no consequences by using violence in a game. We accept the violence and harm because we're told that is how you play the game. We completely accept these aspects of gameplay, like how ancient Greeks completely accepted their myths as their truth.
In a nutshell, myth is an effective tool to propagate certain values as elaborated in the presentation. First, myth is used to justify the way the world works. In this way, the myths present in video games are very similar to the ancient Greek myth. Through the use of these myths as an explanation, we are able to play the game freely without concern for how we would normally act in these situations. By believing in the myth vicariously, We recognize the video game world as separate from our own and can better enjoy the game. Secondly, myths serve as a justification for our actions. We grow up being taught that violence is wrong and that you should never harm another living creature. However, almost every video game has some form of violence the player participates in to get stronger or simply to progress through the game. Even though most people understand that video games are fake and actions taken do not affect the world, it can still feel wrong to go against the beliefs one was taught growing up. That is where the myths come in. Video games will use well-known myths or create their own that justify violence or whatever other action the player might be hesitant in doing. Using this method, the player can use the excuse that it is just the way the game world works and would have no reason to feel regret or be hesitant. These are the two main ways video games manipulate myths.